video about how to study, or how I study, I guess. The specific request that I got was how I study in pharmacy school and my study routine for pharmacy school. So I'm hesitating here because, like, when I told Nate and my friends that I was filming this video, they had to laugh because I used to be a very good student and it's kind of going by the wayside. So take any advice from this video as you wish. I am no expert, I would say, but I worked very hard in my pre-pharm days. It's a different kind of learning once you're in pharmacy school, and we're not so competitive now, so I kind of let things slide and kind of gotten used to like the work-life balance. But I know how to study, I know what I should do, I don't necessarily always practice that. So take what you want from this video. It was requested, so some of you want to see this. It's just a timely video as well because we're kind of getting down to the end of the semester where we are, you know, getting ready for finals and kind of getting burnt out. So maybe there's some tips and tricks that I can tell you, or things that I do that will help you kind of work through this difficult time. We'll get through it together. So I just have a list on my iPad here, and we'll walk through it today. The first thing that I have on the list is definitely, it's so obvious, but you need to adapt and find what works for you. So, like, for instance, I learn best by like rewriting everything. And that's like my standard how I learn best. But that's not necessarily like productive or effective for every class that I'm in. So you need to find what works best for you and in what settings that works best for you. So I'll just give you an idea so I can kind of compare. I'm going to talk about things pretty generally, I think. Or I guess the opposite of that. I'll talk about things, how I study them. I'll tell you what classes I take and kind of apply which methods I'm telling you to what classes I'm in. But I think that a lot of these study methods and tools are applicable to any field or most fields. Definitely not like art or something. I'm not keen on that, but you know what I'm saying. Let's see here. So the classes I'm currently taking in pharmacy school, we kind of have like two categories. We have like therapeutics, or the more scientific part of things, like how things work, pharmacokinetics, that kind of stuff. And then we have pharmacy practice. So we have pharmacy science and then pharmacy practice, which is more of like the patient-centered care, more of like how we will teach patients concepts, or like work with patients on concepts. And then, you know, the other side, the scientific side, is how we understand the concepts, the more scientific, more difficult way of thinking of things. So the classes I currently take are renal. I don't know what the like actual name is, maybe like acid-base disorders or something, renal. So that's like your kidneys. And then I'm taking our lab and lecture, they go together. So just, we kind of move up every year in difficulty with what we learn in lab. So we go over dispensing, non-sterile and sterile types of pharmacy. And then we have like a short-term IPPE and introductory pharmacy practice experience where we do outreach at a nursing home, and we also do our big P3 poster project in that course and have attended some like community group meetings. I have to take stress management as well, it's the elective I chose to take. I have one more elective I have to take, so that's what I'm doing there. Stress management for health professionals. I'm in pharmacy management, so just learning about insurance and that side of things. I'm in neuropsych, public health, and I think that's it. Yeah, that's that. So those are the classes that I'll kind of be relating things to. But like I said before, I think that you can apply this to whatever you wish. So the first thing I want to talk about now, the next thing I guess, is the timeline. So you need to figure out how early you need to start studying for a certain event. So the first key to doing that is knowing when your events are. So definitely, if you don't keep a planner, whatever you do, you need to know when the dates and deadlines are. So I keep my planner and I color code it to classes, I guess. By yellow means that that's like an exam or something is due then. So I can kind of see what I have for the week and kind of I plan ahead. So for instance, I'll go through my next week's study schedule with you. Let's see. Monday we have a sterile team-based learning, and that's just reading. Then we have a business plan due on Tuesday. We also, our psych quiz was moved from Thursday to Tuesday. I have to do that. I have my stress management final and textbook review due on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I have my Arizona missions with top 200 in lab, as well as the renal 4th exam. So next week is not the best. It's going to be very difficult. So I will be starting to study this week, and I should have probably started earlier, but I will be studying this week to prep for next week. And basically, when tests are all crammed in like that, you just kind of have to take it as it is and prioritize what's most important to you. So, like, the 3 big things out of that next week are my lab stuff, my psych quiz, and my renal exam. I'm doing the worst in renal, so I'm really going to focus on that. Lab, I could probably get through without studying very much. Top 200 is something that just kind of comes to me. I work in a pharmacy, so that's okay. And then psych is like I'm doing so-so in, so that's kind of the next priority. Also, you have to look at the order they are coming up. So, you know, after Tuesday, I really have the whole day Wednesday and all the day Thursday before renal to study. So you just have to prioritize and plan ahead for what you'd like to study. And you don't want to get totally burnt out on that subject. So I recommend planning out how you're going to study and be realistic. Like, you're not going to study for like 4 hours in a row. I mean, you might, but I can't do that. So like maybe 2 hours focusing on one thing and then give myself a break to do something else. So that's how I kind of break things up. So definitely just know when your deadlines are, plan ahead for them, and sort of work out a schedule so that you don't have to cram. Cramming happens, okay? It does. With a week like that where things are packed the next day, sometimes you have to take things day by day. But you'll know what works best for you, and if you just try to make a strategy, it'll work out. A tip for not having to cram and to make your studying easier would definitely be to, 1, pay attention while you're in class. That way you're retaining that information while you're listening. And secondly, if at all possible, after the classes that day, go home and review what you just learned. It just sticks a little better that way. It's very time consuming, and I'm rarely able or determined and dedicated to go home and learn what I just sat through an hour of class doing. But honestly, I found this year that when I'm in a pinch for studying later on, I do well on the things that I was really paying attention to in class and was able to review immediately after class. So it's just word to the wise, and then you don't have to spend so much time studying later. But you'll find what works for you. I can say that that's important, and I myself don't always practice that, but I would recommend that, going home after class, maybe a few hours after, and just looking over what you learned that day so it sticks a little bit more. So anyways, back to tools. I fluctuate between digital things and more paper and pen type studying, but I take all my notes on my iPad, which is in front of me. That's embarrassing. I'm like digging for it in my backpack. I take all my notes on Notability, and I do have a video already up about like going digital and how I use Notability, so I'll link that below. So I use Notability a lot when I'm studying because that's where my notes are. So basically I'm just saying I study with my notes. In pharmacy school, I rarely have to take down my own notes and catch everything. This sweater is so fuzzy. I rarely have to catch everything a professor is saying. We usually have slides provided for us, and we just make additional notes or highlight what's important. So I'm lucky there. Get back to my OneNote. I would recommend OneNote. OneNote is what I use to organize everything else in my life. I just realized that you can use OneNote on Apple products, and I'm loving it. So if you're just starting with an iPad, you might want to download that. instead of Notability. I don't know. I don't take notes on it, but check it out. You've seen me use note cards before. I can link my other videos I use note cards for my top 200 and studying medical terminology. When we had pathophysiology, I made a video on studying medical terminology. So I'd recommend note cards sometimes as well, depending on what you're studying. Study guides. So like I said, for like the therapeutics classes, like renal and neuropsych, I study best, I learn best when I like recreate the notes. It's very time consuming and it's not always efficient. So depending on how early I start studying, I will make study guides. And sometimes I type them, sometimes I write them out. So let me get my notebook. Sometimes I do a mix. If I'm mostly just trying to, I usually have an idea in my head of how I want to recreate the notes and how I think things will make sense to me. So I use a lot of color when I write things out. So let's get to my renal stuff. I use color when I write things out just so that it'll stick out to me more. And for renal, for instance, I was only highlighting like lab values, so things that I actually had to like literally remember the numbers. I just didn't want to highlight everything. And for instance, I did make a table here, but when I do these study guides, if I have to make an excessive table, I'll usually just print out what was in the notes so I don't have to like waste time recreating this. If I had to compile data in a way that it would make more sense to me and make a table, I'm definitely going to type that out. So it's whatever works best for you. I learn best when I write things out, but it's a lot faster to use a computer sometimes, so I've done that too. And I don't have very many examples to show you because I actually just gave away all my like pre-pharm and P1 stuff to someone I know. So they have it and I don't, because I'll never look back at that. Don't look back. So another tool that I use besides Notability, note cards, and study guides, is timers and rewards. So I have my little pig timer that I set, and I'll usually set that for like 30 minutes if I have to work on a paper or like get through a concept, and I'll go at it, read whatever I can, get as much as I can done, really focus for 30 minutes, then I'll take as soon as that dings, I'll take a 10-minute break or have a snack or go on my phone or whatever. We'll talk about the phones later, but timing my studying and rewarding myself is something that works for me. Usually, if I cannot find the motivation, I'm not very self-motivated, I can set it for 30, 20 minutes, whatever, and that usually gets me going. And then also another tool I use is the textbook. So the main textbook we use is Pharmacotherapy DePiro book, and we are assigned chapters to read, and we're expected to read them before class, and it's very difficult to do that, and I know they expect you to, but I don't know how they do. I rarely am able to read the chapter before class. Many times I end up reading the chapter after lecture, like when I haven't understood something fully in the way that the teacher has explained it. So I really use the textbook for clarification on a concept, and sometimes can read the assigned chapters. And as far as methods, this is kind of overlapping with tools, but I definitely read through the notes is one method of studying. For the pharmacy practice classes like management and lab, that's generally what I do. There aren't really like problems to work out or like concepts to get. It's mostly like definitions or how, I guess, drugs or something. I don't know how to explain it, but pharmacy practice is a lot of common knowledge, I would say. So typically I just read through the notes in that case. And a lot of times I read through the notes myself. Kelsey and I, before we read back and forth to each other, read one slide. And when you do that, you usually end up remembering what the other person says more. So we don't always study like that, but it's helpful to sometimes just break it up and do something different. So using the notes either by yourself or with a friend. study guides, like I mentioned before, typed versus written, whatever you prefer, but just condensing the notes in a different way, or maybe getting rid of some of the background information. That way you just know what you have to focus on. Then definitely practice tests and problems if they're provided for you, if they're in the back of your chapter. Let's see, what, I guess in renal he provides us with case studies, or like in public health he'll send us practice tests, and so that's always helpful. I mean, it can be difficult too, because you see what's on the practice test and you think that's how your test is going to go, and that's not necessarily true. So those can kind of be tricky sometimes if you read into them too much, but definitely good to test your knowledge. I know with Top 200, when I was first learning it, they have practice tests, and we have to format it so specifically that I definitely will like try to do a few of those before the test, just so I remember how they specifically want me to write it. And then another method of just working your studying in general is color coding. So like I said, I will like use a certain green, sometimes I use green for mechanism of action, so that every time I see green I just recognize that, or you know, color code so that you remember better, whatever makes sense to you. And then going on to focus, which is probably the most difficult part for me. This is that sugar cookie tea, but I can't taste it because I'm getting over a cold, if you can't tell. Or actually, I think I had the flu. Regardless. Focusing. So it's so obvious, but we need to get rid of the phones. Like, that is my number one setback, is my phone. And that's why I mentioned using my little pig timer, like an actual kitchen timer, because as soon as I go to my phone, slide it across, and go to set the clock on here, I see I have a message, and I see I have a notification, and then I better check Instagram, and then I better check Twitter, and then 20 minutes later, I forgot that I was even going to set a timer. So if at all possible, I will avoid electronics. If I'm like actually trying to get something done, I'll like leave my phone in the other room, set that timer. That's easier said than done, because a lot of times I study with my iPad because that's where my notes are, and my messages from the cloud go on all my devices. So like if my friends are messaging me, I'm seeing it on there. That's a point where I can open it up to you guys if you want to leave anything in the comments below, like if there are any like distraction apps where you can kind of like shut down the cool apps on your phone or something like that. I think Lexi, my friend, uses the do not disturb, the little star, the little moon, excuse me. And I think that doesn't let messages come up or something. I've never used it, but I would recommend that. I don't use it, but it's probably a good idea because it's such a distraction. And then for me, something that's really important is just grabbing a notepad or a notebook or whatever and just keeping it by me with a pencil or pen, and just kind of doing a brain dump right before I study. And then if anything comes up while I'm studying that like I just can't worry about at that moment, but I would if I had to keep it in my brain, I'll write it down, because I have that kind of like worried, anxious personality where I'm thinking of 100 things at once, and that's not really helping me learn. So if I can just jot it down and think of it, like come back to it later, I prefer that. And then just having a checklist. So I know what I need to get done next week, but it's also helpful just to have a checklist written down for what I want to get accomplished. You know, you move through that checklist, you know what to go to next, you keep focused, you realize, no, that's not all I had to do today, I better keep working. So just organizing your thoughts and organizing what you need to do and making a plan. There's a dog out there. We're getting our dog this weekend. I'm so happy. So yeah, that's how I study for pharmacy school. So if you want, I guess, to be more specific, I can kind of go through and tell you how I study for each class. Renal, the beginning of the year, I was doing these study guides. That fell off after the second test, and I need to get my stuff together in that class again. So I'll probably read through the notes. Our teachers record lectures online, like they record the lectures, so I'll probably go back and listen to those actually, which is another option that you can do. So that's the main thing I do for renal. I'll probably do the case studies. I need to own that test. Lab and lecture, all I have left for lab is a sterile TBL and top 200 in errors and omissions. Top 200, I've got my flashcards, so I'll just study off of those, have Nate quiz me, have anyone quiz me. And then sterile, I'll just read through the notes. Stress management, that class is kind of an oddball. It's online, so whatever. Management is pretty easy class too. I just read through the notes because that's a pharmacy practice class. Neuropsych, I mostly just read through the notes for neuropsych. And then public health, that's kind of tricky to study for. I mostly read through the notes for that one as well. So, I hope this was helpful to you. I know a lot of you requested it. Hope it was worth the video. I'm sorry I haven't been here in a while, but I've got a list of videos that you've requested, and I thank you so much for doing that. Sometimes I get a little stuck for ideas. So, good luck with all of your classes and all your finals. Pray for me that I pass renal so I can move on to my P4 year. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.